It's time to apply existential philosophy to the art of writing. In other words, what does it all mean? One of the things we tend to forget is that writing should have a purpose. It should set out to do something interesting, to make some kind of change on the world. There should be significance to the things you tell us. That you've had neat experiences or that you found neat facts out, yeah, fine, that's neat and all, but it's trivia unless you are able to bring it some kind of good context. So, how should we think about significance in writing? I will give you just a little bit of warning. This story is just a touch gross from time to time, but I'm okay with that because it's also very embarrassing to me and will give you good reason to laugh at me. Before I got to this current job, I was a part time teacher, and part time college teaching is more horrible than you can possibly imagine. You are at the mercy of whatever classes you can get, and you're not paid all that much, and there's no benefits, of course. And this was long before the time of the Affordable Care Act, which has Trump killed that yet? Oh. So I didn't have any insurance at the time, and I was just really hoping nothing bad would happen to me before I got a full time job. Then I got something called a paranoidal cyst. If you've ever heard of paranoidal cyst, or if, God forbid, you've actually had one, you're probably cringing a little bit right now. The rest of you, here's what it is. At the base of your tailbone, a sac, they think it might be ingrown hair, it might be something else, they really don't know. But right, duodenal cyst forms. You get this bulging that's filled with some fluid right at the base of your tailbone. Yes, it's basically on your ass. This is an ass cyst. Laugh all you want. But it's not fun because the slightest pressure makes it hurt like hell. Now, the problem is people have to sit down. And sitting down was particularly difficult for me because at the time I was part-time teaching at I was living in Bowling Green, teaching at Toledo in the mornings, coming back teaching at Bowling Green in the afternoons, then going out to Fremont to teach at Terra Community College in the evenings. So I was in the car a good 50 or 60 miles at least every day. And whenever I sat down, it hurt like hell. Now, I really think that you should probably don't go and do an image search for paranoidal cyst because it will truly shock you. Anyway, as I said, this was back in the time where I didn't have insurance. So I did, wanted to last it out as long as I could, which turned out to be about 2 days. And then I did what anyone with no health insurance would do. I went to an urgent care clinic. Do you get the best care at an urgent care clinic? No, not really. It tends to be staffed by doctors who have a real job and they're making extra money to pay off their student loans or such. You tend to have to wait a very long time. And this was the case then. They went in, they looked at me, the guy said, "You have a paranoidal cyst." And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." So he told me the basic description I just told you. He's like, "Well, it needs to be drained, so you're going to need to go see a surgeon." I'm like, "Oh, yay, I came here because I don't have any money, and now you're sending me to a surgeon." So I went to the surgeon, and they drained my paranoidal cyst. There are plenty of embarrassing stories to be told about this. Um, I remember that my wife, who I think was my girlfriend at the time, was trying to tell me, you don't want that cyst to burst. Why don't you take one of my pads and put it in your underwear to act as padding and absorption? I'm like, I don't want to do that. And of course, when I went into the paranoidal cyst surgery, the nurse told me, "Well, you might want to get some of your girlfriend's pads to put in to absorb any fluid." I'm like, "Doy." And it was also to be said that I didn't feel particularly cool laying down there with a doctor and a nurse taking a knife to my ass. Go ahead, finish laughing. Years later, when I finally had my full-time job and had insurance and all that, I was teaching it was actually a scientific and technical report writing class on campus. And it was like week 13 and a student came up to me after class and this guy did not he didn't look well. I'm like, before he said anything, I'm like, dude, what's wrong? And he's like, I really hate to do this, and I know we're near the end of the semester, but I can't be in class next week. I'm like, what's up? He's like, have you ever heard of a paranoidal cyst? And I'm like, oh God. He's like, yeah, I've had one all semester long, and it's finally gotten infected, so I have to go to a doctor. I lasted 2 days with one, 2 or 3 days, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. This guy, over 3 months, putting up with unendurable pain. So why didn't he go to the doctor sooner? Well, he too didn't have insurance. So I'm like, oh. Of course, I worked with the guy as much as possible because I felt his pain. Not as long or as deep, but I felt his pain. Now, on the way home that day, I told it to a friend of mine, this Romanian guy who taught briefly part time at Bowling Green at University of Toledo, and I told him about this guy, and he's like, the I'm not even going to try the Romanian accent. He's like, coincidence, I was outside today smoking a cigarette, and this guy sat down and started talking to me. And he told me that he'd missed a week or two of school and he was having a really bad time. So I asked him, like, well, what happened? He's like, well, I had this pain and I was just going to tough it out because I don't have insurance, but my girlfriend made me go to an urgent care clinic. And so I reluctantly went. They took one look at me and called an ambulance because what they found out is I had to go to hospital because I had a ruptured appendix. Now think about it. This poor guy had a ruptured appendix. He wasn't going to go to the hospital because he couldn't afford it. You know what happens if you have a ruptured appendix and you don't get it fixed? Not good stuff. You can die from that. I really hope this guy was really nice to his girlfriend after that. Okay. So let's talk about significance here. At first, I just started telling you a gross story, one that didn't make me look all that good. Then I connected it to this guy who took my classes later who went through a more extreme version than what I went through. And then I connected it to this stranger my friend had ended up smoking a cigarette with. And as we go along, it moves from being a gross story to a recurring event to something that has a real point to it. The real point is that healthcare is screwed up. If you have money, you'll be treated well. If you don't have money, you're at a much greater risk of death and disease. My stories illustrate this. The poor guy who put up with unimaginable pain for over 3 months because he didn't want to go see a doctor because he couldn't afford it. And my friend met a guy who didn't want to go to see a doctor, but his girlfriend nagged him into it. And if he didn't go, he would have died. We've moved from a gross story to one that has a real statement about the state of healthcare in our country. Now, and you tie it directly to the big issue of significance. What kind of income and life you lead is going to play a large role in how successful your life is. People at the bottom are going to have a really hard time reaching the top because they're at much greater risk of death, disease, and other things. There's unequal access, and that's the larger significance. That's why I told you these stories. And that's what I want from your papers. Papers ultimately should be about something, about some issue, something that's important. And you're telling me about your subject because it's important in some way. Don't discount that bigger issue. You have your specific subject, yes, but you gotta tie it to a bigger issue. Did you really care about me and my 2-day excursion and my embarrassing surgery? You're going to care a lot more about the person who almost died. And when I relate all three of those situations together, you might even see how it affects you. Significance makes your paper important. So reach for areas of significance. Really, writing is a powerful act because you're able to take events and distill them down to a basic meaning. And if you have meaning, you can weaponize it. You can use it to affect some level of change. Sounds kind of high and lofty, but we're in the academy, we're in the university, and we'll be moving on to bigger jobs. At least you will. And you're going to have more power. You want to be able to use it effectively, right? See you in the next video.